What you've got is a murder, you've got a body, you've got a crime scene that at this stage revealed one thing that was very important to us. There was a shoe print in the victim's blood at the crime scene.
Police have released the name of a teenage woman murdered at Albury in the state's south. The body of 19-year-old university student Kim Meredith was found with her throat cut.
It's not my Kimmy. It can't be my Kimmy.
What goes through someone's brain to make him do that?
Some people called him the dog man.
And he'd always be bumming smokes off us, the crazy dog man.
It was a really solid brief of evidence against Mr. Miles.
A 23-year-old Forbes man has been charged over the murder of Albury teenager.
He drops a bombshell, basically.
He was very, very cunning because he'd had a long association with courts.
What our family had to go through, it's just bullshit. Yeah, it's definitely not like it is on TV.
Well, I was actually finishing annual leave and I was at home, and I got a phone call to say that there'd been a murder at Albury. I made the decision that I'd call myself back on duty and just start the investigation. Back in 1996, I was the Chief of Detectives at Albury Local Area Command. I lived about 60 k's out of town at that time, so I had to get myself on the road. Down to Albury I went. Had sealed the scene off and made sure that the crime scene wasn't contaminated. It was a fairly devastating scene. We had a young girl who had had her head almost severed. She was nude except for a pair of socks, and she was laying face up in the rear yard of an accountancy firm on concrete. The first primary role is as soon as possible is to establish who the person is. So we started a search around the area, which eventuated in one of my men finding a video card. It had a name on it, Kim Meredith. So myself and Detective Mark Smith and Neil Gray, who was one of our trainees at the time, went to the Meredith's address, knocked on the door. I'm pretty sure it was Bob that answered the door.
First thing they asked me was, do you have a daughter named Kim? I said, yes. Where is she? I said, well, she didn't come home last night. They then asked me for a photograph, a recent photograph of Kim. Gave it to Rod Kennedy. He showed the others. They all nodded their heads. And he said, it's your daughter who's been killed. That was... So then I had to break the news to June, which was fairly traumatic.
I said, oh, well, that can't be my Kimmy. So it's not my Kimmy. It's not my Kimmy. It has to be someone else. No. The next thing I remember is standing at the kitchen bench, making a cup of coffee from the guy from the Salvation Army. So don't ask me what happened in between that, because I have no idea.
It's funny the things you remember in life. On the 23rd, I'll always remember that morning. Every sort of skerrick of detail, which was 26 years ago. This is the first time I've ever spoken about it, to be honest with you. I was at home at my place. Moved out on my own with a couple of mates. I was only 17 at the time, but yeah, nursing a rather large hangover. Knock on the door. Straight away, identified the guys as being police. The first thing going into my head is, shit, what did I do last night? They sat down on the couch. And they basically just said, we have reason to believe your sister was murdered last night. Absolute haze. It's complete fog. Just numbness. Didn't know what was going on. I got to mum and dad's. A couple of mum's friends were there, and they were all breaking down and crying. And I just remember turning around to Dad saying, "Give me your car keys. I've got to get out of here." Grabbed his car and just took off. Yeah, I just remember just driving around all day, just trying to escape my own mind, pretty much. Just emotionally numb to it. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel, what I was supposed to think, what I was allowed to feel, what I was allowed to think. Body had never had to process anything like that. We actually drove down to the crime scene. Yeah, I just wanted, I don't know if I wanted clarification or just get it out of my head. Rod Kennedy, who was the officer that came and told me, he saw me at the crime scene and basically told me to go home.
Kim was born on the 15th of January 1977. Born like a skunk rabbit, really skinny, little tiny thing. Beautiful, blue-eyed, blonde, very stubborn, knew what she wanted. By the age of 6, she decided I couldn't do her hair. She could do it better. So I never ever did her hair again, not once.
Best friend growing up, worst enemy growing up. Fought like cats and dogs over the smallest things, but always had each other's backs with the big things. Piano was her passion. She wasn't studying or hanging out with her mates, she was on that piano.
On Saturday, the 23rd of March 1996, I was the sole rostered staff member of the Homicide Squad South in our office. Principally, my function was to check the police computer system and ascertain whether there had been any incidents that fall within the parameters of a homicide investigation. I checked the significant incidents and found there'd been a murder down at Albury. Albury's a fairly large regional town in New South Wales on the Victorian border on the Murray River. I phoned the Albury police station, spoke to one of the detectives, and that person briefed me on what had happened. I phoned the commander of the homicide squad and got permission to travel and take resources with me. So I phoned round and got one detective to accompany me, which was Detective Senior Constable Linda Neal, and picked her up, and then drove at reasonable speed to Albury. I think what makes a good homicide detective is organisation, instinct, and also teamwork. Homicide is a team sport. And there's also scientists, there's forensic, and there are members of the public. The whole team works together to get the result you need. I travelled to Albury, arriving about 4:35 p.m. in the afternoon. They had an extensive crime scene set up. We go in, we met the detectives who were there. We also met the senior forensic investigator. The deceased had been removed by that time. The crime scene was remarkable for two things in my view. One is that there was a large blood stain, and there was also two arcs, which I'll describe as actually being almost a figure eight pattern, that indicated that the deceased had been dragged along the car park floor. There was no persons of interest for us at all. They really had no real suspicions at that stage.
We did, however, know the identity of the deceased, and we knew a few things about her last movements. Kim Meredith was a 19-year-old university student.
She went to the La Trobe University Wodonga campus, but she also worked part-time in a hotel in Albury.
That was the Commercial Hotel, and Kim had worked there on the evening of March 22nd, the night before she was murdered.
We knew that she'd finished at about midnight that night.
She had a couple of drinks with the co-workers at the Commercial after work, and then drove down the road to the Terminus Hotel, where she left a car and departed on foot around 2 a.m. Kim's next destination was believed to be Soden's Hotel, which was about a 10-minute walk away, where it's understood she was going to meet some more friends. After she left the Terminus Hotel, Kim's most likely route was across the road, down Spencer Street, and finally along Macaulay Street, where she's been intercepted by her killer. It was an horrendous murder and a complex crime scene to process, but the police forensics team did an excellent job.
What you've got is a murder, you've got a body, you've got a crime scene that at this stage revealed one thing that was very important to us. There was a shoe print in the victim's blood at the crime scene. Now that information we had, now that was hard evidence. Okay, somebody had been in that crime scene and stepped in that blood.
I always thought morgues were in a separate place than the main hospital, but we actually had to walk into the main section of the hospital. The walk seemed like 2 miles, a long, white long corridor, and then we finally got into the morgue. Kim was behind a glass wall, and I actually believed I actually put my hand out and I touched her. But Bob keeps saying, no, you're wrong, because there was glass there. But it actually felt that I did touch her. When I looked at her, I didn't see that much blood. There was a little bit, and her eyes were still open. And there was a little twinkle, little shine of light, and I thought, yeah, that's my Kimmy. So that proved to me it was Kim. Yeah, and she wouldn't be coming home again. Yeah.
Police have released the name of a teenage woman murdered at Albury in the state south. The body of 19-year-old university student Kim Meredith was found under a bush with her throat cut. She was on her way to a local hotel.
All these matters are difficult matters, of course, but we're just taking things slowly and sifting through all the evidence. You've got to keep an open mind in these things. One never knows where anything may lead you, or to whom it may lead you.
Belinda, Neil and I met with the Albury cops in the early evening of March 23rd. They'd been on the case since 3 a.m. when Kim's body had been found. So we offered to follow up on some of the leads that had come in during the first day of the investigation.
One of their high priority jobs was 3 people from Melbourne that had come up to play golf at Albury.
On the previous night, these golfers had been drinking at the Terminus Hotel. This is the same place where Kim Meredith was last seen alive.
They had reported seeing what they described as a weird-looking man. They were talking about his lower face, and they kept putting their hands up to the bottom of their jaw, under their nose, and they'd seen him in the pub and noted that he was a bit strange looking. And just as they're leaving the hotel, they see him run from the hotel and run down a street, as it turns out, in the direction of the crime scene. But next morning they find there's been a murder, and they do the right thing, and they say, could be important. They phoned up and reported, and we come back about 10 o'clock from memory, and the Albury detectives are really excited. They know who this person is.
This is Graham Miles, who I had dealings with over many, many years. He was known around town. He always had what seemed like a ghetto blaster, and he had dogs. Some people called him the Dogman, other people called him Two Dogs. He lived out at Quamby House, which was a place for people with disabilities, and he lived in a shed with his dogs and a cat.
He used to get into Dean Street, Albury. There's a park in Dean Street, and he often used to be there with his dog. He would annoy people. He had committed some petty offences. He was well known to a number of police in Albury.
I remember him for when I was probably 13, 14, when he was homeless living in Albury. I used to have to catch 2 buses to get to school, and one bus stop was at QE2 Square in the centre of town. We'd swap buses, and he'd always be down there every morning with a couple of dogs on leashes and bumming smokes off us, and we were trying to bum smokes off him, whichever way it was going to go. And we all just knew him as the crazy dog man.
Ultimately, after repeated appearances in the local court, he left. I think he was gone for a couple of years. People hadn't seen him, and then he came back unexpectedly about the time of the Kim Meredith murder.
We knew he was there because he was witnessed by the visiting golfers and staff at the Terminus Hotel, and he was observed running away from the hotel towards the crime scene. Graham Miles had become a key person of interest in our inquiry.
Well, once he'd been identified and it was ascertained that he had left Albury and gone to his family in Forbes, a team was then sent to Forbes.
We arrived at Forbes early in the morning and started with the local police at 6 a.m. Belinda, Neil and I were accompanied by the officer in charge of the investigation, Mark Smith. We relied on local police in Forbes to take us to Graham Miles' house. Miles lived with his auntie Kate on a semi-rural property on the outskirts of Forbes. They had some acreage and they ran sheep on the property. It wasn't a big sheep station or anything like that, but they made a living off the land.
Basically knock on the door, no search warrant, it's all consensual stuff here. Explain who we are, the auntie's there, Mr. Miles is there. The auntie was really good, very cooperative, and allows us in.
Miles had returned home to the property the day before, so we asked to see the clothing he wore back from Albury. His auntie took us to the laundry. There we found a pile of blood-stained clothing, including a pair of Miles's jeans. We needed to test the jeans for DNA. We also recovered a number of knives from the house. The knives were also taken for testing.
Thank you. Mr. Miles indicated that he owned 3 watches, one of which was this one.
The watch was added to the list of items to be tested for DNA. because we knew that a watch had been stolen from Kim when she was murdered. Finally, we identified a set of shoes that Miles was wearing and asked if we could test them as well. Positive results on any one of those items would link Miles directly to the murder of Kim Meredith.
I want you to understand that you are not obliged to say or do anything unless you wish, but whatever you say or do will be electronically recorded and may later be used in evidence. Do you understand that?
What do you mean everything? What's that mean?
It can later be used at court.
It was very clear that he, apart from his physical deformity, that he had some intellectual disabilities. But the Albury police were of the belief that he was able to comprehend what we were saying and communicate responses to us. And as the interview unfolded, I agree with them.
Do you agree that I also told you that at the conclusion of the interview, that is at the end of the interview, you'd be supplied with a copy of one of the master audio tapes?
Yep.
His big difficulty was his ability to speak and us to understand him because of his cleft palate.
I'm not really sure. It would be a Thursday. Yeah, Thursday, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I left Thursday morning. Yeah, 10:30.
About 10:30.
10:30.
Okay.
He agrees with us that he's in Albury on the Thursday, Friday and Saturday. He just tells us he goes there basically for a social visit, I suppose is his way to phrase it. He catches bus and train from Forbes, and that's in fact how he gets back again on the Saturday.
We're very keen to hear Miles's version of where he was on the Friday night and the early hours of the Saturday morning, because that's when Kim Meredith was murdered, and that's when he tells us about a girlfriend called Debbie Wilson. He says he stayed at the girlfriend's place on Friday night between 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. on the Saturday morning. And that's the relevant times for us anyway, the Friday night to the Saturday morning. So he's there between 10 and 10 is his way to phrase it.
Does she live in a house or does she live
I still live in the flats.
Okay.
Mission houses.
It sounded like mission. It's actually commission, as in how the commission plays. So Debbie's very vital in this whole thing because Mr. Miles says, basically, that's my alibi. I'm with the girlfriend. The whole thing is about giving Mr. Miles as much opportunity as you can to tell us the truth, so we can either eliminate him or confirm him as a suspect. I asked about the bloodstained jeans, which his auntie said were his. He says they're not. He also, during the course of it, Stacey had no knife with him in Albury. He's shown a photo of the deceased. He says, I don't know her. And he basically denies committing the murder. So it's an interview in which our interest in Mr. Miles starts to peak greatly. He's denying lots of things that we have been told are the case. We particularly wanted the Deb Wilson stuff followed up. It subsequently transpires that Debbie Wilson does know him, but the girlfriend concept is not true. The fact that he stayed with her is not true. And then find the unit that he nominates as where Debbie lives, and it's untrue. Basically hasn't seen him for over a year. The goal of the second interview is to give him a chance to explain things that we believe are not true, but also to put to him, out of fairness, any extra evidence we have gathered. And in this case, Debbie Wilson's been found. She lives at Corowa, New South Wales, which is still on the Murray, but some distance from Albury. Her alibi is confirmed because she's with her parents. He says that none of that's true. He's very forceful. No, it's not true. He also is told he is seen by staff at the Terminus Hotel. The previous interview he has denied being there. And he says that's untrue. We had the Debbie alibi, if I can use that term, okay? And in our view, we broke that alibi. So all of a sudden, he doesn't have an alibi. All of a sudden, he is very much in focus for this murder.
Apparently the church was full, packed to the streets. I can't remember seeing anyone in there. Just remember hearing Mum cry.
By the time of the third interview, we had some new information about Graham Miles and his movements around the time that Kim Meredith was murdered.
Very early in proceedings, he'd tried to use her credit card at a Hume branch in Olive Street. And he'd tried a couple of times, and there was a taxi driver, I think Mr. Wilson was across the road, who saw him and thought, well, he realised he had a bit of a disability and may want a bit of assistance, and went across.
We know the time because it's recorded 2:40 and 2:41 a.m. on Saturday, the 23rd of March 1996, right? They both try the ATM card and it fails, hence the 2:40 and 2:41 access times. So she's got to have given up possession of it sometime before that.
And there's no other conclusion to be drawn other than Graham Miles had stolen the card from Kim.
Mr. Miles says the taxi driver's a liar. Thank you. Yes, there's a photo of the shoes that were taken off Mr. Miles.
We'd now had time to forensically compare the joggers owned by Miles to the bloody shoe print found at the murder scene.
The scientific expert has looked at it, and they do an arrow type thing saying these are the matching points. And it's explained to Mr. Miles that there's significant matching points on this shoe. And he says he doesn't care, he was not there. He continued to say, I was not at that scene.
As far as we were concerned, we now had sufficient evidence against Graham Miles, and it was time to act.
Graham, at the completion of this interview, you will be under arrest, and I intend to charge you with the murder of...
I don't know murder.
Meredith.
I don't know fucking murder, mate. I should know your word. Harrington, that's your word.
In any event, do you want to say anything further?
No, I do not.
Have you given the answers as recorded of your own free will?
Yes, I do. What you turn off, do I have to go home today or what?
No.
Why?
Because you'll be staying in custody.
If there's one aspect of the entire process that we had to stay vigilant about, it was our interactions with Graham Miles. Given his intellectual and physical disabilities, we needed to know if he understood what we were saying to him.
I believe that his rights, bearing in mind his disability, had been protected. I believe that his real problem, as I keep reiterating, was his ability to speak properly.
During the third interview on March 28, we asked Graham's aunt, Kate, if she would stay with him to provide support.
It totally, in our view, eliminates any suggestion that he's being overborne by the police, and to ensure that he's well looked after. She actually leaves partway through the interview because She says afterwards that she became convinced that Graham was the murderer, and she just couldn't sit there anymore. But she does come back at the end of it at our request, hopefully to keep Mr. Miles calm when we're going to tell him that Graham's going to be charged with murder. And literally just as we turn the machine off and pop the tapes, he stands up and punches Detective Smith in the face, and a melee breaks out. I reach across the table and grab him, pull him down, and Mr. Miles, during the course of the struggle, has hit his side of his face above his eye on the side of the table and is bleeding. And he's restrained, handcuffed, and taken down to the charge room and subsequently charged with the murder and refused bail.
I done no murder. I done no fucking murder, mate.
After what had happened in the interview room, we asked Auntie Kate if she would make a statement attesting to what she'd witnessed. She was happy to oblige.
I wanted nothing untoward to be alleged in relation to this case. The local police did a really good job with this. They really did. They went above and beyond, in my view. Within 5 days, he's locked up.
A 23-year-old Forbes man has been arrested and charged over the weekend murder of Albury teenager Kim Meredith.
I'll never forget the day. It's the biggest crowd I've ever seen at the Albury court.
Graham Mayall's screams could be heard from the street this morning as he was taken into court under heavy guard.
And all you could hear from behind the roller door, where they pull the wagon in, yeah, just carry on and kerfuffle. And
outside, locals rallied around the devastated family and friends.
Everyone's just shocked, upset.
Mum and Dad didn't want to go. I wanted to go, I just wanted to see him.
Mayalls appeared in court shackled in handcuffs. Police continued to struggle with him throughout the hearing, while his defence lawyer told the court they had the wrong man. Mayalls didn't apply for bail, but his arrest has been little comfort for Kim's family.
I know that there will probably never be an answer to the question, why Kimmy?
I just simply read a note or a letter that I'd drafted to the people of Albury, the friends, thanking everyone who gave us their love, strangers who got around us.
It had a huge impact on the town, and in subsequent days the outpouring of anger really rose to a crescendo, to the point where there was a rally held in QE2 Square and 2,500 people turned up.
It just hit them big time. Because there was no motive that we know of, it could have been any girl that night. Anyone.
And then, of course, the legal proceedings started.
Did you have any inkling of what was to come?
No.
No.
It was the start of a long journey.
Once Graham Miles had been formally charged, we started preparing a brief of evidence to use in the committal hearing. We had Miles' shoe prints from the murder scene, proving he was there, and we had other items found at the house in Forbes.
We now have a knife, the watch, we now have a pair of jeans.
All those items were sent for DNA analysis, and all those items came back with Kim Meredith's blood on them.
It was a really solid, in our view, brief of evidence against Mr. Miles. He drops a bombshell basically on the interview. He admits that the Debbie Wilson girlfriend is a rubbish alibi. He says, "Yeah, I knew you didn't believe me with that. Yeah, it's not true. It's not true."
Now he's got a different account of the night that Kim Meredith was murdered.
He was present when the murder happened. He didn't do the murder. He was with a friend who he nominates. He wasn't aware that the murder was going to happen.
He was there.
But the other bloke did it.
Yeah, the other guy did it.
We locate this friend who is quite intellectually disabled. He said he was with his girlfriend. Now, he was also with a carer. Okay, now the carer is able to provide us cognizant information, and taxi records indicate movements of these people, and it is very clear from the carer's evidence and the taxi records that the nominated friend cannot be the murderer, that Mr. Miles has implicated him for his own purposes.
He obviously knew he was in trouble, and he's tried to come up with a couple of explanations, which were very quickly disproved.
So that started on the 4th of December and was adjourned on the 12th of December. So that was adjourned until the 7th of February. 7th of February arrived. No, sorry, we can't do it that day. How about the 24th of April? So we went back to court on the 24th of April for a day and a half to listen to 2 people.
Yeah, it's definitely not like it is on TV.
This week's hearing is to determine if Males is sent to a criminal trial or examined by the Mental Health Review Tribunal, which has the power to detain and protect a person.
The jury in that case found that Mr. Miles was fit to plead. In other words, his intellectual disabilities were not to render him incapable of appearing before a court.
Whenever a decision was made, straight away there'd be an appeal. Then there'd be another appeal and another appeal. And before the trial actually started, another application was made.
That was the first time I just could not take my eyes off Graham Miles. I was just fixated. What goes through someone's brain to make him do that? And it was the first time I saw evidence, photographic evidence of Kim's body, purely because of where we were seated up in the nosebleed section. We were looking down over the jury and photos getting passed around. I sort of caught a glimpse of them. Just put me back into a state of internal rage, sort of fired up a little bit, I guess. Boom, there it is in your face. This is what happened to her. Yeah, it wasn't nice.
Obviously there was an issue with his disability, but my opinion is he had a certain cunning or street smarts, and I saw that during the trial. Quite often he tried to disrupt proceedings. He'd burp, pass wind, make duck noises, do all sorts of things.
He started singing songs, nursery rhymes, spitting at the police behind, looking at Bob and I, going and to the police officers.
And they had legal counsel, and the legal counsel, he was of the view that Mr. Miles was so intellectually disabled that he could not comprehend what the proceedings were or communicate to him, the legal counsel, what he was supposed to do to defend Mr. Miles.
Graham Miles was sitting in the dock in the centre of the court, and an assistant to the defence team was taking notes of everything he was doing in court, the noises he was making, etc. When no notes had been taken for some time, he got a lolly and he threw it across and to get the guy's attention, and went like this, take some notes, and then proceeded to make a bit of a disturbance and went quiet again. So he was very, very cunning in the way he went about things. He knew exactly everything that was going on because he'd had a long association with courts.
And eventually he was convicted by the jury of murder.
After waiting 3.5 years, part of the torment is finally over for the parents of murder victim Kim Meredith. The man who killed her was sent to jail.
Known by locals as the Dog Man, Graham Males will spend up to the next 25 years in jail.
This closes the book. So we've read each chapter and now we've closed the book, and hopefully we'll get on with our lives, but Kim will always be there.
We thought that's the end. That's really good. He's gone to jail for 25 years, Paul in 18. We could actually go on a holiday.
Relief. It's all over. Time to move on.
But it wasn't, was it?
No.
It's not uncommon for an appeal to be lodged in the murder conviction, and in this case, I obviously expected an appeal.
They were granted an appeal for the fitness to plea, so then we had to go through another one of those.
The jury on the second fitness came back to say he was unfit to plea. So from being what I call the layperson, the jail system, he went into the mental health system.
A special hearing to determine whether or not Graham Males was responsible for Kim's death. Well, the special hearing at the end of the day was word for word the original trial. Same witnesses, same statements, same evidence. It was just a complete replay.
He was found responsible for the death of Kim Meredith. But the interesting thing is he didn't end up in a mental institute. He ended up in Long Bay Jail.
It's a bit of a cop-out, really. Whether you're mentally fit to plea or not mentally fit to plea, at the end of the day, you killed someone, you killed them.
The biggest thing with this is the frustration. The frustration on behalf of, well, the police, the Merediths, the prosecution, the fact that it just dragged on for so long. Over 7 years, you'd have to be looking at millions of dollars.
Well, Robert, what sort of reaction do you have today to?
Well, I guess hopefully we think we've reached finality after the justice system has taken 7 years and 4 months to deliver this verdict, and let's hope that the law in this state can be reformed so that others don't have to go through what we've been through.
So really, I suppose he's going to suffer more than being free. And I'd rather him suffer than be free. I firmly believe if he was free, he'd probably do it again. It was actually 6 months before Kim was killed. And so it gave us a lot of bonding. We stayed in London, did different things, went to Paris for 3 days. It was good.
I was remember June, she came home, she said, I went away with my daughter and came back with my best friend. And it was a wonderful experience for both of them.
I'll be honest with you, I'm talking today for my own benefit, to be honest with you. I haven't spoken to anyone in near half as much depth of what I've spoken about today in 26 years. Been a bit of a gypsy ever since Kim died. I just, switched myself off to the world pretty much. Emotionally inept, a lot of my ex-partners call me. I can't emotionally commit to someone. Any time emotion enters my life, I just block it out. Maybe I've got a few demons that I'm still dealing with from the 23rd of March. Yeah, rang a mate, said to go to couch for a couple of weeks. 2.5 years later, I'm still in Albury. Week 1 of getting a job in Albury, someone brought it up straight away and said, you're Kim Meredith's brother. It gets a bit tricky, especially where I'm working. It's directly opposite the pub where Kim used to work, and it's now shut down, so a lot of their old regulars, they're my customers. They'll come in, they'll tell a story. They remember about Kim. It's nice to know people remember. But then, it's just those memories trigger back every day. It's not an easy road for anyone. What happened to Kim, just bullshit. What our family had to go through for that 7 years was bullshit. It's just the legal system, justice system for you.
The mayor rang and said, we'd like to put a memorial up for Kim. So there's a plaque underneath a huge tree behind the courthouse. So people can go there and remember. It's great that people of Albury have done that for Kim and for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Albury lost one of its best the day Kim Meredith was murdered. We caught her killer very quickly, but there's nothing I could do, nothing I could say that would ever ease the pain felt by her family.
And it's one of the tragic things about homicide. I can't bring their daughter back.